All right, welcome back. We have got our cylinder and the mouth opening and cylinder made for our Tiki. Now we're going to make the top. That top, as you recall, is a cone. On this one, it's inverted on the top and on the bottom, and that gives us a really structurally strong Tiki. It's good and rigid, and that's what we're really looking for. I haven't taken the time to let this dry completely because, in the interest of time, I just want to move on. I want to get this thing ready to go. I have in front of me my extra piece. This is wait, that isn't it. This is the piece that I cut out from the mouth, and one of that piece will probably be sufficient to make one of the lids, but I'll end up using, for the other lid, I'll have to use a piece of the excess that I had cut off. And what I'm going to do is just like we did with the little copy paper Tiki, is I'm going to make doll pants. Basically, you cut halfway up the square thereabouts and fold it ever so slightly. In this instance, it's just, about the width of a nickel. Hold the back side of it and put a little tape on the outside corner there. You can see you've got a cone shape. It's a very slight cone, but it's a cone. And that corner is held in place with a piece of tape. Now, one thing I should do probably is a few more pieces. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull off a whole bunch of the things I got to do. I'm going to cut off a whole bunch more, or tear off a whole bunch more little thumbnail sized pieces. Alright, so now I've got my piece here and I pulled off a couple extra pieces of tape. I'm just going to add a little extra to this tape just to help hold it shut. And then I'm going to flip it over, and on the concave side, you've made a little cup here. And on the cup side, the inside of it, I'm bending this a little bit, and again, you see the little trough I created, just like the trough I created on the inside of my Tiki body. I'm going to put just a little glue. It doesn't take much, just a little dollop about the size of a pea. Will spread pretty good and far. I want it mostly on this inside, or on this outside corner. I let it close, and you can see it just makes a nice little line right towards the center there. I'm going to spread it out with my finger so that it's smooth. And that's it. Now I have the lid for my Tiki, and I've got a little tiny bit leaking out here, and I just don't care. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it on top of my Tiki, and what I see is that it fits fairly smoothly. Uh-oh, I've got a problem. That problem is I've got a little notch on my Tiki. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off that notch. And I want that to be relatively flush. So there it is. It's now relatively flush. So what I'm going to do is I'll lay my lid back on there. And I'm pressing slightly on the center. I'm not pressing on the outer edges, only on the center. And what I see when I do that is it kind of makes it a nice round fit. Now I'm going to go back to my body as a third hand, but I'm going to be cautious about it because, if you can see, I've got glue all over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an apron so that it doesn't get all over my nice shirt. All right, that shirt being one of my favorites, I kind of want to not get stuff all over it. So I'm going to move this around a little bit. You can see I've got a nice tight snug fit all the way around. I can turn the Tiki around. I don't want to press too hard on it because my Tiki is still, the glue has it solidified, so it'll be flexy. And you can see when I push on it, it actually closes the mouth a little more, and I don't want to do that too much. So I'm just going to hold it in place gently, and I'm going to put a piece of tape just to kind of hold it right there where I want it. I'll use my thumbnail, what there is of it, to hold that into the seam. Do the same thing there, and I'm not mashing too hard. I do not want to get tape under the connection because that keeps the glue from touching the paper. But all I'm doing is just holding the pieces of paper together very gently. If you have to hold it really hard, you probably need to stop back and assess what you can do to fix that, because that means you've got a problem somewhere. So I'm just going to keep doing this all the way around, and I'm going to start in one side and I'm going to look, if you can see, it wants to pop all the way out here. I'm just going to kind of push it in ever so slightly and hold it. I've got enough tape on it now that it's holding itself on there, and that's what I wanted. Get all my little pieces here. And I'm overlaying them, overlapping them just a little bit. And this connection needs to be pretty smooth because there's a whole lot of structural integrity that comes to your Tiki from having this join right here be nice and solid. And you don't have to have a whole lot of overlap here, but you do have to have some. Notice I've only got probably a 1/4 inch. That's cutting it a little close, really, but it'll do. Anything less than that, you just need to cut another piece of paper and try again. Notice that I have not cut a circle in this. I won't do that until the glue is pretty close to completely dried. And the reason for that is I don't want to cut it too small. And cutting it too small is bad. So I'm putting this around, all the way around. Those of you that are really observant will notice that my paper is, it's already pulled apart. It's ever so slightly here, and it doesn't matter. As long as it holds after the glue dries, it's all right if it pops open a little bit. If it pops open so that the pieces are not together anymore, well, that's a problem. But having it just open a little bit here, no big deal. As long as it holds its general cylindrical shape, we can adjust everything else. And what I'm doing, I'm just putting that tape all the way around. I'm not going to make you sit and watch all of that. Alright, you can see what's going on here. I've got the tape all the way around it now. I've smoothed it in there pretty good. Notice I'm not mashing the tape real hard against the body of the Tiki, but I am pushing it pretty tightly against that corner there. And it's okay if there's a tiny bit of gap, but we want to avoid a lot. The reason I'm not mashing the tape super flush against the body of the Tiki here is because I've got to pull this tape off once the glue dries. After the glue is dry, all of this tape is coming off of there, and that's a pretty key point. So once I've got this one taped on, I've got all the tape put around here, this one's ready to glue. So I do the glue on this one. Oh no, I can't see all the way. I can't see this area here to know if it's got glue on it. Well, as it happens, I already know that it takes about 1 minute for a puddle of glue to travel all the way around. It moves about as fast as a second hand on a watch, which is convenient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about a teaspoonful down, and you can kind of see in that little bottom corner there. I'm just going to put about a teaspoonful of glue down there in the corner. That's all it takes. Kind of making a mess because I'm trying to make it visible to the camera and less to me. So you can see down there in the bottom, I've got that little puddle, a little teaspoon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the Tiki a little bit, and you can see that it's starting to move. And what it is, it's moving around. You got to move it pretty slow. You want to move it. It takes, again, about a minute to get the glue all the way around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that glue get as far as it'll go. It starts to move slower as it runs thinner because gravity just doesn't, the puddle isn't as heavy, and it just doesn't move as quickly. But if my puddle was big enough, and I'm pretty sure my puddle is, actually I'm not positive that I put enough. If you don't put enough, you can always go back and add a little more. If you put too much, that's worse than not putting enough, because you can always add more, but if you put too much, you've just got a big blobby goop, and it'll soften up the paper and it collapses on itself, and that's a bad thing. So what I've got now is I can kind of see it now. I can see it coming back around. I'm just turning it around. It looks like it's gonna just barely be enough, and if it isn't, well, if it runs out before it gets where I want it to, I'll just put a little dollop in there extra. But you can kind of see it starting to join. You might can see, I don't know. Can you see that? It's right about where the joint of the paper is now. I think that's going to be too thin, so I'm just going to put a little dollop in there extra because I can see it. Just put a little bit more in there. I keep getting it on the mouth side, so it's going to drip, but that's all right. And here it goes. Now, I now know that I've made a bead of glue all the way around. So now the glue goes all the way around this on the inside, and that's what I wanted. So now, and you can already see the tiki is no longer perfectly round. It's already taken on sort of a triangular shape there, just like Frank and Tiki did. But the top of it is actually, it's pretty round. It's a little bit ovaled, and I don't care at all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut another piece and put it on the top. Alright, so I just cut a piece off of the extra that I had cut off, and somebody asked me the other day, can I make the top of my tiki flat? And the short answer is, yeah, sure, you can do that. But it's a lot less structurally strong, and frankly, and it also, it makes your tiki more prone to tipping over. I'm not sure why having a cone there or a cone-shaped opening is a little more stable than having it flat, but it's probably because if you glue it on there flat, it isn't actually perfectly flat. All the waves and bubbles kind of want to assert themselves, and you end up with a piece that's not entirely flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this piece, which is actually way too big. I'm going to trim it to fit maybe a little better and make doll pants out of it, just like I did for this, and make a little cone. And it just so happens I got one piece of tape left, which is convenient. All right, and there we go. I got a little cone, and that will be, let's see how we line it up here. And that'll be the other end, the lid for the top or the bottom. You can see it's going to fit in there pretty good. All right, I'm going to glue this up and install it and show you the next step. All right, so I've got my piece here. I pulled off a little tape. I just wanted you to see that I remembered I'm going to put a little bit of glue in the lid there so that it's solid. And I'm going to do to this, I'm going to line the seam of it up to the back side so that the front of it, which happens to be the larger area there, just makes it a little easier to deal with. So I'm going to use my body as a third hand. I'm pressing down, you can see I'm pressing down just in the center of the little cone that I made. And it doesn't fit perfectly, but it fits real close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the front of my tiki and dead center, because I want to make sure that if nothing else is lined up clean, I want that part to be lined up clean. I'm going to use my right hand. Here we go. Let's see if we can get that up there. I'm just going to lay that in there. Pressing down a little bit in the center kind of helps hold it in place, and that's what I want. Now for this end, I can't pour glue in the opposite end, so what I've got to do is I've got to leave a section of it open, and I'm going to put that opening somewhere where there's plenty of curvature so that it actually works out better for me. Turn him around. Yeah, I'm going to leave an opening like right here where there's a lot of curvature to it, and I'll explain why that is here in just a minute. But I'm going to leave an opening about the size of a quarter. It would be just big enough to slide a quarter in. It's the size of the opening that I'm going to need. And we'll come back around this way. You can see it's kind of trying to lift up a little bit there. And I don't care. It's not too bad. It's not lifting up a lot. And you can see the glue has softened it, and you can see the ridges that it has made. It's kind of made these little wrinkles in my tiki, and that's not a disaster. It's nothing. It's no big deal. It's just where the glue is dripped down and softened the paper just enough to allow it to crease, and that's okay. It just adds character to my tiki. And I like a tiki with character because that's kind of the whole point. Tikis with character are cool. So I'm going to tape this all the way around. I'm not going to make you watch. All right, so I've now taped it all the way around. Got my Tiki. He's looking very stylish now, isn't he? So I've got this opening right here, and what I'm going to do is, I remembered how much glue I poured in the bottom. It took about a teaspoon, maybe a little extra. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of angle it so that I'm going to pour that teaspoon in, and it's going to go right about here through the opening. I'm just going to pour it in just like this, and I can see how much is going in. And it's really important that I had a pretty solid, clean connection all the way around. And I believe that is probably sufficient. So what I'm going to do is, now what I'm going to do is, that bead of glue is now right here, and it's just kind of running its way down. It's probably there now. And how long did it take? That's right, about a minute. So it's probably here now, and I'm keeping the Tiki angled as best I can so that I've got all of the glue staying in this little crease that's created. And you can feel the paper. Sometimes you can feel it. If your glue is pretty cold, you can feel the paper getting a little bit cooler where it's getting wet from the glue. It's probably, I don't know, probably right here now. It's kind of hard to tell, but I've got a pretty good angle on it so that the glue wants to run just down this little valley that's created. It's almost like a trough. And there we go. For those of you that weren't paying attention earlier, Tiki is a Maori term, which is, the Maori people are native to Polynesia, and specifically, so I understand, I'm not an expert on these things, but I understand that the Maori people mostly live in New Zealand and the islands in that particular area of Polynesia and the South Pacific. I might be turning it too fast, so I'll make sure I don't go too fast. Yeah, I can feel the paper getting a little bit cool. Oh, look, I turned it just the right speed because there it is coming out. That means now that it's all the way around. And I've got a little dollop there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe that off, kind of push it back in there with my finger, and let that sit for just a minute. And you can see that it's got a nice bead right there. I'm just going to leave that alone. I could tape it shut, but because it leaked out a little bit already while I was busy drawing with you, it has created a nice little bead there, and I'm just going to let it sit. So that's it. That is the body and mouth of a Tiki complete. This is assignment 1, or actually it's assignment 3 total in the Tiki module, but this is the first assignment in the Tiki itself, and you can see it's glued all the way around there, taped and glued all the way around the mouth, taped and glued up the seam, and taped and glued around the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry overnight, then I'll come back and remove all the tape and and trim the shapes the way I like them, and then we'll start putting on the additional shapes. Have a good day.